Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the City of Camarillo Planning Commission regular meeting of February 18th, 2020. If anyone wishes to speak tonight, if you could fill out a blue card and bring it to the front table, appreciate it. Mr. Secretary, can you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Vandermeulen?
Present.
Commissioner Espinosa?
Here.
Commissioner Edsel?
Here.
Vice Chair Talmadge?
Here.
And Chairman Murphy.
Here. Okay, could we all please stand for the flag salute, and Commissioner Espinosa would lead us.
Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We're now on item 4 of the agenda, which is to approve the minutes of our past meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, I'd like to also include into the minutes our deputy attorney, Kane Twin. He was absent from our minutes, but he was really here at the meeting.
All right, so we are adding Mr. Kane to the minutes from the last meeting. And that's the meeting of January 21st, 2020.
Okay, with that correction, I'll move to approve them as submitted.
Second. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Edsel, seconded by Commissioner Espinosa, I believe. Got there first. And let's please vote. All right, and with that amendment, it passes 5-0. Okay, now on to item 5, public comments. This is the time for any member of the public to come forward and speak on any non-agenda item. So is there anyone who would like to come forth and do that at this time? Seeing no one come forward, we will close public comment and open up item number 6, which is a public hearing for CUP 401 Neighbor Wines. Do we have a staff report on that, please?
Yes, Sam Dominguez will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Chair Murphy and fellow planning commissioners. This conditional use permit, CUP 401, is for Neighbor Wines, a wine production facility. Neighbor Wines is requesting approval for a conditional use permit for the production and storage of wine for off-site sales with a tasting area under a Type 2 alcoholic beverage control license within an existing 2,263 square foot suite within the light manufacturing zone. The proposed winery is located at 1330 Flynn Road, Unit E, at the northeast corner of Adolfo Road and Flynn Road, within an existing industrial business park containing a variety of industrial uses, a karate studio, and 2 churches. This view is of the front of the proposed winery from the parking lot. The proposed floor plan includes areas for production, storage and bathroom, and a tasting area. The 2,263 square foot winery facility requires a total of 5 parking spaces. The remaining uses in the business park include office, manufacturing, warehouse, 2 churches, and a karate studio. The 2 churches require 27 parking spaces before 7 p.m. on weekdays as an office use, and 129 spaces after 7 p.m. on weekdays and weekends as an assembly use, while the other office and industrial uses are closed. Under both operating conditions, the highest demand for parking, including the proposed winery, is 189 parking spaces. There are 207 parking spaces on site, which will provide for sufficient parking for the existing and proposed uses. Additionally, as a point of clarification, the agenda report distributed contained a typo in the general plan discussion saying that the use will not constitute a nuisance and be incompatible. The discussion should say the use will not constitute a nuisance or be incompatible. The project was reviewed in accordance with CEQA and was determined to be categorically exempt under Class 1 existing facilities. Staff recommends approval of the proposed CUP, subject to the conditions of approval. The action of the Planning Commission is final unless an appeal is filed within 10 days of the date of their action. This concludes staff's presentation.
All right, do we have any questions for staff on this?
I just had one comment. I know there's, adequate parking and more than that's needed, but it just seems like that the two allocated for the tasting area, that seems kind of low. That's based on the square footage or of that particular use?
Yes, are you talking about the storage or the tasting?
No, the tasting area, the requirement of two parking.
Correct. It's a small space of 88 square feet, and the ratio for that is one space for 45 square feet of tasting area, which goes up to two if we round it up.
Okay, thank you.
Gene?
Yes, I'm a bit confused when I look at the diagram where the tasting room is relative to the entry from the picture you showed.
At the end.
Is the entry to the tasting room off the front? Which way is, you showed us a picture of the front of the building.
So, Commissioner, this is the entrance here on this side.
That's the existing entrance to that suite?
Correct.
Okay, so the picture was taken from the left.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that anyone using the tasting room is parking out to the front.
Towards the front.
Yeah, they don't have to walk through to get to the tasting room.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Beverly?
I had one question on the time for even, it says Friday through Sundays from 12 to 6. Is 12 going to be too early, even though it's only a few parking spaces, to interfere with the church parking? If they open at 12 on Sundays?
Commissioner, are you referring to the hours of the tasting room?
Uh-huh. I think it was open at the same time. Yeah, the tasting room.
I believe that is a condition set by Alcoholic Beverage Control. They are only allowed to have tasting rooms between the hours of 12 to 6, but we can definitely look into
Okay.
that.
I just don't know if 1 o'clock would be better or something, although they should have most of the parking lot to park in. And my other concern that I didn't see anything about was if they're going to be processing, it sounds like the grapes there, are they going to have large truck deliveries of the grapes coming in? And is there enough room to get in and around there with that?
Commissioner, the applicant, Dusty, is here to answer questions, and we can definitely ask that
Okay.
to him.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dusty Nabor. I'm the owner of Nabor Wines.
Thanks,
Good
Dusty.
evening.
We're asking questions of staff right now, but we'll get to you in just a second. Okay.
That's all I had.
Okay. Luis?
Just real quick, the operating hours I saw were, for production, were said to be 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Is that correct? And
Yes, that is correct.
are they permitted to operate at nighttime and hours other than those daytime hours specified?
The conditional use permit would limit them between those to operate within those hours.
Okay, so nobody should be there throughout the night working in production, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Good. The question I have on that sketch, looking at the sketch, do those partitions involve TIs for the building? Is it a completely open room right now, and are those rooms going to go in as a part of this?
Commissioner, it is my understanding that they moved in as is.
Okay.
The applicant can answer that also.
And so that yellow area, that's the tasting area, is that correct? That's the 88 square feet?
The yellow area, correct?
All right. Will there be an additional partition within that room to designate that area, or is it just more or less what would be involved sitting around the tasting table there?
Yes, so the table is fairly small, 6 by 8. We allocated additional space for chairs, for seating, essentially. It's going to be within an entryway. It's not going to be partitioned.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
One more. Is there going to be retail sale of wine out of the tasting room, or is that another location?
The tasting room is only for tasting. They sell online only, so they would not be they would not have a retail component to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Luis?
Well, for that front entryway where it does outline storage, what is the storage then? If there's not display or wine for sale there, what exactly is that storage in that area?
Commissioner Dusty can answer that a little bit better for us as well.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and open the public testimony. And Dusty, is it Dusty or Dustin?
USTY, Dustin.
Yes, thanks for coming this
Yeah,
evening.
no problem.
And did you want to talk about the project a little bit, or do you want to just entertain questions?
It's pretty self-explanatory. This is more my hobby than my business. I have another job in Agora Hills, and this is kind of my outlet, a little bit of a charitable outlet for me and artistic outlet for me. We do a very, very small amount, and thus the small area. To answer some of the questions about the tasting room right now is non-existent. We're filing for the permit if we want to add one in the future. We have, at this moment in time, no plans to be open to the public. We've been rather successful in our first years, and we produce such a small amount of wine. It's highly allocated. It's a rather exclusive label, and to open this up to the public, we would simply be overwhelmed. So we're going to leave it close to the public at our current production level and keep it allocated online. Even if we were to open a tasting room in the future, it would probably be off-site in a more retail setting like downtown Camarillo or downtown Ventura. But at this time, we thought we would add it just in case we wanted to put one in. But right now, it's all, that front area is completely storage, and it is all packing materials, boxes, and things of that nature.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, when you sell online, is it under the name Neighbor Wines? Is that?
DustyNeighborWines.com.
Okay.
We actually have 3 labels. Dusty Neighbor Wines. The second one is called Bolt 2 Wines, BOLTTO Wines. And then we have one called NSO by Dusty Neighbor, which is our more value line.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just curious, the source of your grapes, are they local, like from the Santa Monica Mountains? I know a lot of people have vineyards, small vineyards out there. Are you using their grapes?
We are not. We source from Santa Barbara County and Paso Robles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I was still interested if you're actually processing them. Will these be coming in large trucks, or
They
is there
do
room
not.
for them to move around? Or
Currently, we produce about 15 tons of grapes. Any one shipment is about 3 tons, which comes on a rather small flatbed truck. And we can unload it in a matter of minutes and get it inside the facility. It's only, the most we receive at one time is 6 half-ton bins, which is
Okay.
really not a lot. We can get it in rather quickly.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
Yeah, I think you answered my question in describing what was going on there in that front area.
Yeah.
Front room. Thank you.
No problem.
I was wondering, I understand you're moving from Westlake Village. You have a facility there.
That's correct.
How does the size of this compare to Westlake Village?
The actual production area is larger. The building footprint in Westlake Village is much, much larger, but they had a lot more going on. They had a brewery and some wine storage lockers and things like that. Our actual production facility is about that, was about the size of that green area. They also have some case storage that we weren't able to access. So the building was bigger in Westlake Village. The reception area was smaller than ours, being to the right side of the building out the back. And the actual production facility that we will now, it'll only be us instead of being in a shared space, is now larger here than it was there.
Good. Sounds like a growth situation. That's good.
Yeah, they're also repurposing that building down there, and it's no longer going to be a custom crush, so it was untenable for us to stay.
Okay. Any other questions for Dusty? No?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Does anyone else wish to come forward and speak on this one? Seeing no one come forward, I will close public testimony. And
Chairman Murphy,
yes.
I just want to share a little additional information that staff actually encouraged Mr. Dusty Nabor to include the tasting room now, so that in the event that in the future, if he wanted to have limited tasting, he wouldn't have to come back and have his CUP updated or amended. And since he was filing the application, paying the fees, we thought it'd be prudent to just include that at this time. So that's just a little bit of additional clarification. It's consistent with the applicant and their testimony. And we do understand that tasting is not a component that they anticipate starting with right away, but it's something I think that could be planned for in the future with this CUP and would be appropriate.
That sounds like a good planning move to me. All right, we've closed public testimony and open it up for commissioner comments on this.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, and it's a good use for in a good location, so I'm in favor of it.
Well, it's nice to see some of this type of business moving into Camarillo more so. I was used to seeing a lot of it up in Ventura when I worked up there. I'd drive around and see beginning breweries or wineries and stuff. So it's nice to see it coming our way.
Yeah, I think it works. Appreciate the staff's efforts in studying the issues and making it pretty clear for us to follow.
All right, Gene, you?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Nothing further.
I'll
Yeah.
motion to call for a resolution unless you're, I'm sorry, Tom.
Yeah, no, I'm just glad to see that you're looking at Camarillo. I like the idea of adding everything to that. May the tasting room comes soon if we pass this tonight. And we'll go ahead and call for resolution.
Resolution number PC 2020-04, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a conditional use permit request by Nabor Wines LLC for the operation of a winery with a tasting room under a Type 02 wine grower ABC license in a 2,263 square foot suite within an existing industrial building located at 1330 Flynn Road, Unit E, in the light manufacturing M1 zone, further described as CUP 401.
I'll make a motion to waive further reading and vote for adoption.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Etzel, seconded by Commissioner Talmadge. Can we please vote? And it passes 5-0. Thank you.
So we look forward to the tasting room on Ventura Boulevard.
That's
Just
right.
want to share that.
Feel free to stay as long as you want.
Exciting stuff. Item 7, public hearing LD 546. Mueller Worthy Architects. May we have an agenda report, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is the one I have a conflict on. They're the applicants are clients of our law firm, so I'm going to recuse myself.
All right, thank you. We'll come get you when it's over. All right, may we have the agenda report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Murphy. John Novi will present this item.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy, members of the Planning Commission. This Land Division LD 546 is from Mullerworthy Architects for an approximately 11.62 acre parcel on the south side of Camarillo Center Drive, in between Factory Storage Drives and Playa La Vista. Back in 1996, this property was 4 separate lots, and it was subject to a lot line adjustment that merged them into a single lot, and the property was formerly used for the Ventura County Star. The request now is to subdivide the existing 11.62 acre parcel into 3 new parcels, approximately 4.4 acres, 5.09 acres, and 2.13 acres as parcels 1, 2, and 3. Parcels 1 and 2 have existing buildings on them, and parcel 3 is currently vacant with a parking lot. The lot size and dimension requirements in the LM zone call for 1 acre minimum lot size. All 3 parcels, as you can see in the chart here, do make that minimum lot size. Lot width is 150 feet, 175 for corner lots. All 3 parcels do comply with the lot width requirement, as well as comply with the lot depth requirement of 200 feet. And you can see on the chart there that the proposed parcels easily meet and exceed those minimum standards. Additionally, there are building setback requirements. Parcels 1 and 2 have the existing buildings on them. There are 30 feet for the front yard, which both of the parcels 1 and 2 comply with. Required side yard is the height of the building, which is 35 feet and 20 feet respectively on the sides, which the buildings do comply, as well as the height of the building on the rear yard setback, which the buildings as positioned and with the proposed LD will continue to comply with the lot size requirements. The project was reviewed for CEQA, and it was determined to be exempt under Class 15 minor land divisions. And it is recommended that the Planning Commission approve LD 546 subject to the conditions of approval. The action of the Planning Commission is final unless an appeal is filed within 10 days of their action. And that concludes staff's presentation.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions for staff?
Question. What's the ownership of the property? Is it all one owner just dividing into 3 parcels, or is it separate ownership?
Currently, it is all under one ownership, and there is condition of approval that there will be a required reciprocal access and parking agreements in place so that if the parcels are sold off individually, there will still be access and parking available for the 2 existing buildings and any proposed future buildings on that site.
Is there any indication of what may happen with the property, like changes to the existing buildings or perhaps a new building?
My understanding is the buildings on parcels number 1 and 2 are going to remain in place without change. There is a conceptual proposal for a new building on parcel 3. That would be reviewed under a separate industrial plan development permit, at which time we'll be looking at setbacks, building height, and parking to ensure that not only the new building on parcel 3 has enough parking, but the entire site will be able to be parked.
My concerns when I looked at it was kind of in line with the parking. Right now, it looks like the building on parcel 1 is vacant, the building on parcel 2 is in use, but all the parking for that appears to be in the spaces on building that would be on lot number 1. And I didn't see any vehicles really parked around the building on parcel 2. And the wide spot in the back of it, or on the west side of it, is like for loading docks. And so I was wondering, if they do this, the parking agreement, does that become recorded so that it is always there, which I thought it was, but I wasn't positive. And second, if they're split and parcel 1 becomes used and needs all their parking space, to me, I was just concerned that where the occupants of parcel 2 are going to park. Or would they maybe change the loading dock area to parking, or will they have enough if that third parcel does get built?
You are correct on the first part of your question, that there is going to be a reciprocal parking agreement that will run with the land. So they will be bound to that on any future proposed use on parcel 3. To clarify, this parcel up here on top, this is parcel 1. Parcel 2 is down here with the other building, and then parcel 3 is the vacant parcel. Parcel 3 does provide additional parking for parcel 2 primarily. Parcel 1 does have sufficient parking to support the building that's on site.
Right.
My understanding is there is no proposal right now to reconfigure any of the loading docks on parcel 2.
Okay.
However, any new building on parcel 3 is going to be subject to that shared parking agreement, and any size of that building will be restrictive of being able to park not only that building, but still be able to provide sufficient parking to parcel 2.
Okay.
And those agreements will be recorded and run with the land, so it's not something that when a parcel sells, that agreement will continue to be effective on any new ownership.
Okay. It's like I say, today when I drove by, they were all parked on the parking lot in parcel 1. Yeah, so,
Yeah, parcel 1 does provide a significant amount of parking. There is a bit of a grade differential between parcels 2 and 3.
Right.
There's not a lot of good pedestrian connectivity.
Correct.
However, parcel 1 does have 2 separate parking fields. There is a spot here on the south side of the building and another spot over here
Right.
on the west side of the building that do provide sufficient parking for the building on parcel 1 and subsidize the parking on parcel 2.
okay. Thank you.
I have a question regarding condition 20. Wondered if you could just shed some light on how this actually works. It describes a road maintenance and fire protection agreement and fund. So does that mean that the streets surrounding the property are not actually maintained by the city themselves, but by a fund from the property owners adjacent to these streets?
Apologies for the delay while we reread the condition. Yeah, I believe the condition there, which was imposed by fire, is to ensure that there remains sufficient access to the public right-of-way to all portions of the property, and that the property ownership would be responsible for maintaining sufficient access while on site once the apparatus would leave public right-of-way.
Okay, so it really doesn't relate to the actual street condition or the maintenance of the street condition, okay.
Internal circulation street, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's the only question I had.
I have a question about, since we're talking about conditions, condition 9 under miscellaneous says developer must form an owners association or other approved program. Do we really mean that? That we're going to have the equivalent of a homeowners association for 3 industrial lots? What exists now? Well, it's one piece of property, but what's the intent?
For maintenance of any common facilities. It may be during the design of the different IPDs, if they end up sharing perhaps a desilting basin or some kind of stormwater quality basin, then they would need to all agree to share in that maintenance. Or it may be when the different individual projects come in, they all want to treat the stormwater separately. That may happen. But it allows for them to go in together and on any shared improvements, and then that document, and it's not necessarily an owners association, again, any other document that puts them all in that same responsibility for the shared item.
What kind of vehicle is that? Is it an agreement? Is it a written document? Or what is that?
Yeah, it would be a written document.
Okay. Because the
And it would
wording as
be-
it says now is common areas, parking lots, driving aisles, private water mains, private sewer mains. I presume everything on property is private, and then it when it hits the public sewer, that's in the main street?
Once it
Or
gets to
water
the sewer
lines?
main, then it would be the Camarillo Sanitary District, but
Yeah.
it's private till there. So yeah, those are others. It might be that if the sewer traverses all three properties and everybody connects to it, then if there's a plug at the downstream end, but still in the private side, then they all need to be able to agree on how that gets
Okay.
maintained or divided.
And then on, thank you. And then on condition 18, developer must comply with Ventura County Public Works Agency computer-aided mapping ordinance number such and such. What does that really mean? Are they providing some sort of a database to the county GIS system, or what?
Yes. So the county provides the review of the final map when it goes in, and then the county surveyor, once it goes through, after it goes through review, they sign and then send it over to the assessor parcel map, and they get everything into digitized form, up on the atlases, into data that they do share with the city. A lot of the data, if you've come visited the different counters and you see it, and people call it the assessor's data that's in there, that comes from the mapping.
Okay, so
And
it's
then
really
they'll
the,
get 3 different APN numbers once this gets divided.
that's right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't have any others, although for me it was familiar to see that they were going to have an owners association thing. They'll have a mini CCNRs.
Yeah. Okay, on the owners association, we've covered some of the utilities and so forth. Also, what would be covered under that owners association is maintenance of the parking lots, the common areas, and landscaping, formulated some way in the CCNRs, I suppose. And I wanted to confirm that those CCNRs will be reviewed by city staff, and they'll be able to go through those items, item by item at that time.
That's correct. If they go that method, if it ends up being just a couple of things, it might be just a different form of written document agreement that the city attorney's office definitely agrees that that's a better, smaller methodology, because it's, owners association sounds so big. If it comes down to, you know what, this portion of the parking lot satisfies everyone, but everyone has to use it, then they kind of all need to agree to maintain it. We've just seen all too often people pointing fingers. Just nice to have a document that says, for anyone who buys it, oh, I didn't realize I share that parking lot. Okay, I get it. Oh, my sewer ties into their sewer. Okay, I get it. So it just kind of puts everyone on notice.
And
Yeah.
is this also recorded?
Yes.
Like regular CCNRs?
Yes. Yes, whatever document it ends up being, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff? All right, then I'd like to open the public testimony. And do we have a representative of the applicant here?
I'm representing the client from Mullerworthy Architects.
That's great. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Sorry, my name is Nicole Troutman.
Great. Thanks for coming, Nicole. Did you want to talk about it a little bit or entertain questions?
I think everything was already addressed. They answered exactly as the project is. So unless you have any specific questions for me on the project, I don't think I have anything further to say.
All right. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
No, is there any plans for an occupant for the vacated building at this time?
There isn't at this time, no. They're not sure what kind of building they want to do. It really just depends on finding a tenant and figuring out if that will fit the space.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I don't think so. I think all my questions were answered.
Okay. On that building, I don't know if you're the right person to ask for this, but has there been any interest over the years since the Star left for occupying that the Ventura Star building?
There is an occupant there now.
Oh, there is?
In the Ventura Star Printing Building, yes. The
Oh, I didn't catch
550
that.
building, the top left building, that's vacant. They are looking for a tenant.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
My question may not be necessarily relevant, but I'm just curious why Muller-Worthy Architects is the proponent of the lot split. I guess it's not clear. What's the relationship?
We've done work for the Ventura County Star Building, and when the owner, we kind of came along with the package when the owner bought the building. When this was in the works previously, this had gone through the civil consultant, and we were tied into it in some capacity. That was before I worked for the company, so this is just kind of history and legacy on the project.
Yeah, normally we see an individual or some company representing the interest, and then the architect or engineer or whatever is the hired gun smart person on all the questions. I was just curious why it was Muller-Worthy Architects is the lead.
It wasn't anything specific. It's just that our relationship with the owner, they had just asked us to help further the
All right.
process.
No, I just curious. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? No. All right, thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Would anyone else like to step forward and comment on this application? No one? Staff? Any further comments, questions from staff? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public testimony on this and open this up for commissioner comments.
I have no additional comments.
None?
Nothing additional here.
Yeah, I think I asked all mine.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have anything either, so why don't we call for a resolution?
Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy. Resolution number PC 2020-05, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a request by Muller-Worthy Architects for a land division application to subdivide an approximately 11.62 acre lot into 3 parcels of approximately 4.40 acres, parcel 1, 5.09 acres for parcel 2, and 2.13 acres for parcel 3, located at 550 Camarillo Center Drive and 151 Factory Stores Drive in the limited manufacturing LM zone, further described as LD 546.
I'd like to make a motion that we waive any further reading and move to adopt the resolution.
I'll second.
Been moved by Commissioner Espinosa and seconded by Commissioner Vandermeulen. Let's please vote. And it passes 4-0 with 1 abstention. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then at 5, there's the parking here and here for this.
Sounds good.
And there's no cars parking. There's no parking here.
All right, everybody good to keep going here? Yeah? Okay. We'll move on to item 8, public hearing, proposed ordinance amending and restating Chapter 19.49 of the Camarillo Municipal Code regarding density bonuses and other residential development incentives.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy. So our Deputy City Attorney, Kane Toon, will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Chair, and members of the Planning Commission. State density bonus law requires that the city grant certain density bonuses for eligible projects. The state recently updated the density bonus law to allow for density bonuses for projects with 20% student housing units, projects with 100% affordable units to lower income households, although the state will tolerate if up to 20% of that is moderate income housing, up to 4 density bonuses for projects that are within 0.5 miles of a major transit stop, and also updates to parking requirements for supportive needs housing. So these changes are summarized on the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3 on PC item 8. And there's a red line starting at page 7 if you wanted to look at the particular changes. Essentially, they are to adopt the updates to the state density bonus law and make clarification and conforming changes to our ordinance. State law requires the city adopt an ordinance that complies with this density bonus law, and the attached ordinance does just that. And with all zoning code amendments, this one requires the Planning Commission to review and make a recommendation to the City Council on its approval. And since this ordinance is largely ministerial and intended to comply with state law, staff's recommendation is for the Planning Commission to find the ordinance exempt from CEQA and recommend its approval to the City Council. I am available, and staff is available for if there is any other questions that you have.
All right, do we have any questions for City Council or staff?
I've got a couple of questions. One is when you have law changes of this nature, just talking about the actual process, is this left up to the local government authorities to determine what the law actually says and what the modifications need to be? So each individual jurisdiction or local government entity decides on their own what the law says and puts that in their ordinance, or is there some state entity that you have to clear this with before you make modifications to the municipal code?
So if I'm understanding your question right, usually the process depends on just how the city operates. Usually either there's updates brought on to our office by staff, or something happens that requires an update and we do it on our own initiative. Now for this particular ordinance, whether there are a lot of, I guess, local interpretation, if you may, that's not really the direction that we're taking. We try to track the state density bonus law as closely as possible. This is really just the state requiring us to adopt an ordinance, and to avoid any ambiguities, we like to track the state law as it's written. So this ordinance basically follows the state law.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if there's any risk if it's just being reviewed locally, changed locally, amended locally, whether there's ever any issue with whether the law was properly interpreted and whether it causes an uncompliance situation, and
It could if we didn't have an excellent city attorney helping us make sure we're compliant with state law. So we must comply with this update. It's basically an order of the state. And since we have a local density bonus ordinance, we're updating it to be consistent with state law. In some other sections of our municipal code, there's more latitude and more local authority where we could be more restrictive than the state, or we could have different standards if the state doesn't have a standard. But in this instance, it's very objective that what the state does, we must comply. And so we're doing that to be consistent, because if we were found to be inconsistent, we could suffer damages from the state or lose potential grants, for instance.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask about the density changes with low income. If, for example, you have, if it's 80% based on 100% of the housing development being low income, so it allows a density increase of 80%, and 20% is allowed to be moderate. Would you take that? So if you've got, let's say, 10 and 8 of it is low income and 2 of it is moderate income, would you look at that 80% and work that against just the low income numbers, housing numbers, or the entire low and moderate housing numbers combined?
Well, usually this is at the discretion of the applicant. They usually want to have a certain amount based on what type of density bonus or incentives they want to get as part of their application. We just know, according to state law, they're allowing this density bonus incentive for what they call 100% lower income housing, but I think they understand some market reality. Sometimes there needs to be a little bit of give, so they allow for up to 20% moderate income households for their project. But again, this is an applicant decision.
Okay. And then the last thing I had is the tables seem to start at 10 in terms of the number, but is the definition of a housing development 5 or more? And do you have any, would there be any projects where you'd have only 6 units, housing units, that would fall into this? And what happens in those instances? How is that applied if they're not on this table?
Know if we've ever received an application with those amounts.
So we have had instances where we've had 2 affordable units being constructed currently with Habitat for Humanity, and they have received concessions with setbacks, for example. So they received concessions in some of their development standards. But typically, for higher affordability, you usually have higher numbers, and that's why the table comes into play. And that was part of a state law density bonus update that occurred years ago, and that's why it's in our ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Beverly? Still looking at it?
No. I think I got through this okay when I was reading it, so.
Okay.
I had a question, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, the state gives a statewide mandate for this change, and not every city in the state are the same. They're all different. Are there any components of this that the city of Camarillo or staff feels that's not a good thing for our city that we're kind of stuck with, or?
Well, yes and no. So we don't necessarily appreciate the state taking away our local authority to make decisions and have the City Council and Planning Commission provide their input on applications. However, staff is supportive of affordable housing, and so if this is a tool where a developer can use this as an opportunity to provide additional low-income units, we think that'd be terrific.
Okay. Thank you.
For an example, on the stock property that's being planned, isn't that all low income? And would this have made a difference on how many units could have gone in there?
It is all low income. And the city's a partner in development and working with Area Housing Authority, Many Mansions, and Habitat for Humanity, and we're establishing the terms for the development in agreement with those nonprofit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't believe that they're going to be utilizing the density bonus ordinance because we're working everything out through a property
No, I'm
agreement.
not talking about changing that one, but if we were planning it currently, then would they be able to allow additional units more so than what
So I
might be
guess
planned
the
today
simple
because
answer
we
is,
planned it before?
if there was a residential developer that has a property available for residential development and they wanted to provide additional units and additional affordability, they could use this ordinance, yes.
Okay. I needed to apply it to something.
Stock's unique because we're working on that project together.
Right. That was the only one I could think of that I knew.
I understand. No, I
offhand that
totally
was-
get it, but that one's kind of a one-off because we have a term sheet that establishes affordability criteria, which is above and beyond most any of our other affordable projects. It's going to be all low, very low, and extremely low, with 20% carve-out for mentally and/or physically incapacitated individuals or disabled individuals.
And it looks really nice, or at least
And-
the plans
and,
do.
Yeah, we're really proud of the way it's coming out. We're hopeful that they will continue to proceed through the entitlement application process.
Okay, thank you.
I have two questions or comments, maybe more, but it's difficult for me to understand what is an affordable housing unit or what is low income. Seems to me there's a very intricate formula that's used by the city to determine, and it's referenced here just by section of the code or something like that. Just in real numbers, what does that mean? For the city of Camarillo, what is a low-income housing unit? What does that mean?
So for low income, it's defined as 80% of the county median income based on the household size.
And the median income is?
So I want to say, Oksana, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's approximately like 82,000 for a family of four.
So?
89 now? It's 89.
So we're
approximately
saying
89.
that there would be an income of $60-something thousand.
No, that is the 80%
Yes,
number. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So it's not. So it'd be 89,000 for a family of four to be considered low income.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people raise eyebrows on that. I know in here there's a couple of references, and I know where it comes from, but the provision for, I guess, allocations or incentives being near a major transit stop. Where do we have a major transit stop in Camarillo?
Well, I hear Mr. Secretary saying that a Metrolink is, one of the major stops, but the definition in the code identifies existing rail, bus rapid transit stations, ferry terminals, and intersections with 2 or more bus routes at 15-minute intervals during peak times, and also any identified as such in any regional transportation plan.
So I know we have a Metrolink station with about 5 or 6 stops a day, and I see buses going somewhere and coming from somewhere, but where do they stop, and what's the major transit stop? Is it the Metrolink station? Is it the intersection of 2 streets, or what?
Our understanding is our only major transit center is the Metrolink station, and it does have rail and bus that meets the definition.
Okay. All right.
All right, do we have any further questions for staff? Okay, I'm curious as to when staff was formulating the additional density bonuses, doing the reformulation of this, did they look at other agencies to see what other agencies might be doing about this?
Chairman, I don't believe so. And again, this ordinance, and to reference Commissioner Vandermeulen's comment earlier, it's the result of many iterations of the state density bonus law. It's decades in the making. So that's why our ordinance is so comprehensive, and we're only making some specific amendments to the existing. But mainly, this is just to adopt as close as possible the state law and the state law requirements.
All right, great. And one last confirmation that on the public notices, you haven't received any pre-hearing feedback from the public on this?
No.
Okay. All right, do we have any other questions for staff?
No, thank you. No.
Okay. Then I can open the public hearing and ask anyone to come forward and speak on this issue, and seeing no one in the audience, I'm going to close the public testimony and open it up for commissioner comments.
I think it's fairly straightforward. They modified our code to comply with the state, so I'm going to feel like I could recommend it to the city council to approve.
Yeah, from what I read, it really did kind of follow what we have to do, so I'm fine with recommending this to the city council.
Yeah, no further comments here.
This will be my soapbox. Not long. I concur with the earlier comment that it's unfortunate that we have a lot of land use decisions, especially regarding housing, forced down our throats from the state. It seems to me it should be a local city decision as to what they define for their needs. Now, I understand that the city will be updating its housing element perhaps later this year, and I think that's an opportunity to incorporate, I think, some local flavor to the process so that we can say this is what is Camarillo, not just, well, we're in compliance with the state law. I understand that, but it's unfortunate that we just have to make these decisions and resolutions to support someone else's planning that isn't necessarily of our own design. So that's enough of my soapbox. I think you know where I'm coming from. I support the action that we have tonight. I just had to, I think, reinforce Mr. Vaca's comments earlier.
Okay. Well, yeah, I know there are those who feel that the state is pretty heavy-handed in this matter, but I can see that the city has gone right to work, rolled up their sleeves, and looked at Assembly Bill 1763 and done what they can to comply with it. I think it's good to see further incentivizing for home builders to consider incorporating units for the lower income, student, disabled, and homeless members of our community. I'm hoping this will have an effect of more proposed units for those sectors in the future housing development applications in this city. It just seems like the right thing to do, but regardless of how one feels about it, the outcome would also help the city in meeting its regional housing need allocation goals, which Gene alluded to a little earlier. So I can fully support sending this up to City Council for their review. Any other comments? No? Then I suppose we should call for a resolution.
Resolution number PC 2020-06, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo recommending approval to the City Council of an ordinance amending and restating Chapter 19.49 of the Camarillo Municipal Code regarding density bonuses and other residential development incentives.
I'll make a motion that we waive further reading and vote for adoption.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Etzel, seconded by Commissioner Talmadge. Let's please vote. And it carries 5-0. Thank you, staff. Good job on that. Brings us to item 9, family daycare ordinances. Where are we here?
Okay, thank you, Chairman Murphy. Oksana Buck will be presenting this item this evening.
Thank you, and Chairman Murphy and Commissioners. In 2019, the governor signed into law Senate Bill 234, which revised regulations pertaining to the family daycare homes, and the intent was to help address a statewide shortage of regulated daycares. Once the law went into effect on January 1st, the city must treat family daycare homes the same as small family daycare homes or any other residence in the zone that allows residential uses. The city could no longer require a business license, impose fees or tax, and the city may no longer require a permit or impose any other restrictions on large in-home daycares that don't apply to residential uses. Tonight, we're proposing an ordinance to amend various sections of the Camarillo Municipal Code to comply with the new state requirements. It should be noted that all family daycare homes will remain subject to the State Department of Social Services Child Care Licensing Program regulations, and that daycare homes will also be subject to all city regulations that apply to residential uses. The proposed ordinance references the state's definition for large and small family daycares, which are as follows. The large family daycare provides care for 7 to 12 children, or up to 14, if at least one child is in kindergarten and at least one is 6 years old, and there are no more than 3 infants. Small family daycare provides care for up to 6 children, or 8 children, if at least one is in kindergarten, at least one is 6 years old, and there are no more than 2 infants. The proposed ordinance removes the following regulations from the Camarillo Municipal Code that pertain to large family daycare homes. One is removing the 300-foot separation between large family daycare homes, removes the employee parking requirement, removes regulations regarding pickup and drop-off of the children, and regulation on the outdoor activities. And again, we'd like to point out that these requirements are removed from the Camarillo Municipal Code. However, family daycare homes will still be subject to all state regulations and all city regulations that apply to residential uses, and will be subject to code enforcement. The suggested action is to adopt a resolution recommending approval to the City Council of the proposed ordinance amending certain sections of the Camarillo Municipal Code pertaining to a large family daycare. And that concludes that presentation.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions for staff?
Not yet. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, so with this law change here, this is actually resulting in revenue loss for the city for business license and also permit fees?
Yes, we did have a permit process, and we did charge business tax for large family daycares only, not small family daycares.
Is there like an estimate as to what that loss might be? No?
No.
Okay. And having that process, having the permit process and business license, you were able to track what the activity was in terms of large family daycare homes. So if this cuts you out of the loop now, will there be any sort of process to even know when you have large at this point? Will you lose that information?
As far as the city's tracking, however, there is Ventura County Child Care Association where they do track licensed daycare in the county.
Right. I see that they're still going to be required to have like a fire clearance for large family daycare, but in county fire would probably be able to track. But the city themselves will kind of lose any sort of inventory or knowledge of that activity going on, right?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Beverly?
Not right now.
No? Go ahead, Dave.
Is there any requirement under the current code for someone that is running a daycare facility to notify neighbors that they have this in their neighborhood, or if they're starting a new one, that they notify their neighbors, or does it just happen, and how does that work?
There is no noticing requirement. When an applicant used to come in, we review it, but we never notified any neighbors, and they were not required to do so.
That, I see, could be problematic, especially certain times of the day. Suddenly, part of a street gets filled up with a bunch of cars, and people wonder why. And, well, it's picking my kid up for what? And it just goes on. Well, I'll save my editorial comments for later. Thank you.
Yeah, was that no notification, was that prior to this new ordinance too? Or is that just something now under the new ordinance we can't do?
From before, the city did not notify before the ordinance.
Is there anything that the changes in here that the city's concerned about in a big way, or?
Well, we used to have a minimum separation of 300 feet between properties, so you wouldn't be able to have them next door to one another. And we also had standards that vehicle picking and pickup and drop off couldn't block driveways and couldn't block circulation. And based on the updates required as part of the state law, we have to omit those sections of our municipal code.
Thank you.
I can see some unhappy neighbors with that.
All right, any other questions for staff? No, I'm curious about a couple things. Oksana, you mentioned that there's a Ventura County agency that keeps track of the larger family daycare operations. Is that correct?
It's a Ventura County Child Care Association. It's a nonprofit organization, and it's made up of child care providers.
And do they regulate it, or do they just do their best to keep track of where these
They keep
large?
track. They keep track of the state licensed facilities that are throughout the county, and it includes Camarillo.
Okay. All right. And just again, to confirm that the city hasn't received any pre-hearing public feedback regarding this proposed?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? All right, I'll open the public testimony and again close it because I don't see anyone coming forward. And we'll open this up for commissioner comments.
I think just like the other one is, we don't have much of a choice. We have to be in compliance with the state law. So based on that, I would vote to recommend to send it on to city council.
Gene?
I would concur that it should be sent on to the city council. Again, it's unfortunate that we have a lot of our local planning being done in Sacramento by people that don't really know what's going on here. But nonetheless, this is the state law, and we need to be in compliance. So I need to support it. Thank you.
Okay.
I was going to say, after I did pull up SB 234 and read through that as I was reading through this, and we're doing what we have to do. So there are parts of it that I think are going to be a little problematic, as far as parking, pickup, closeness, less distance between buildings if we do get larger care centers on smaller lots. But it doesn't look like we have a choice, so this definitely needs to go up to city council.
I just want to say I really appreciate, the amount of work that goes into the law changes like this. These are pretty complex issues, and a lot has to be, researched and sifted through. And so I appreciate the work staff did preparing for this.
Okay, well, it does appear as though the city's again moved forward to comply with the state regulations or state direction. And I share some of the same concerns that were brought up tonight, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't pass it up to City Council for their review. We can call for a resolution, please.
Resolution number PC 2020-07. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo recommending approval to the City Council of an ordinance amending certain sections of the Camarillo Municipal Code pertaining to family daycare home regulations.
I'll make a motion to waive further reading and vote for adoption.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Etzel, seconded by Commissioner Vandermeulen. Can we please vote? And it carries 5-0. Thank you. I believe that takes us to item 10, which is the director's report for this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy. So we will not be having a planning commission meeting on March 3rd, and I understand most, if not all, the commissioners will be attending this year's Planning Commission Academy put on by the League of California Cities in Sacramento, so looking forward to some good training there. We do want you to know that we will have a meeting. We anticipate definitely having a meeting on March 17th, which is also one of my favorite holidays, St. Patrick's Day, so some unfortunate timing there, but we do have business that we'll have to take care of. And then it's not in your Planning Commission meeting calendar, but we typically have a joint study session with the City Council every year in April to review the city's capital improvement program in a draft format. That will occur on Wednesday, April 22nd this year. So if you could please put that in your calendars now, it'd be terrific if you could all attend. That's going to be Wednesday, April 22nd. And we anticipate that would be around 5:30 or no later than 6. So if you could please be here by 5:30 in case council breaks early for that, that'd be terrific. And that concludes my presentation, other than I'd like to thank all the staff for being here this evening and supporting our department and doing an excellent job. I'm very proud of everybody, and I appreciate Tally with Public Works being here to always provide good information as well. So thank you all very much. You're doing a great job, and we really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Any final commissioner comments for the evening?
I wanted to ask, last year we had a tour of the city of housing. Is there something similar that's going to take place this year?
Yes, we always have an annual tour with the Planning Commission and our Planning Division and Public Works staff, and we highlight all the good work that you guys have all done. So we'll be planning that sometime in the spring, and we try to coordinate that with one of our Planning Commission meetings after daylight savings comes into play so that we have daylight. So we'll be getting that scheduled probably in May or June.
Okay, thank you.
I know you're looking forward to that, I'm sure, right?
I am.
All right, good, I'm
It was
glad.
a nice tour. It was great.
It is a good tour. We actually put a lot of hard work into that, and we're proud of it because we all do a really good job together, and it's fun to get out and see what happens after, we make decisions in this room and how, it shows itself in the built environment here in our community. So we look forward to it annually.
And what's nice also, especially for us, having gone in 2019 and then getting to go a year later, and see some of the ones that are still in work, but how they've progressed, so.
I know, it's
That's-
exciting. So Cracker Barrel's very busy. If you haven't had a chance to visit Cracker Barrel.
I drove
check
by
that
the other
out.
night, there was a long line. All the rocking chairs were in use.
Yeah, that's been the trend so far. And then across the street, we're so excited to see earth moving going on over at the Hotel Conference Center. So we're really happy to see that project under construction.
One comment to the Cracker Barrel. I was driving through one of the streets in Leisure Village, and what caught my eye was 2 new blue rocking chairs
Oh, nice.
on the front porch with the little Sickles insignia on top of them. So it's like, okay.
So we're going to countrify Camarillo.
Yeah,
Good
some-
by me. Okay, anyone else? You good? Okay, just a quick thank you to the city staff for putting together all the arrangements for the Planning Commissioners Academy. Jamie and your staff, wonderful to work with, and we're all looking forward to attending. All right? So with that, yep,
Did I understand all of us are going? Is that right?
sounded like it.
Yeah, good, okay.
That's great.
We'll see you all there. All right, thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.